Laumali whakafofonga Harete Hipango.
Malolele, Madam Speaker, and to my sister across the House. This is acknowledgement to the Tongan Reo this week, as we will also next week pay acknowledgement to Te Reo Māori. So
Māori language.
And in acknowledging you, I also acknowledge the peoples of Tonga who may be viewing this debate this evening, and also to our brothers and sisters throughout the Pacific realm. So speaking specifically to this proposed legislation, Madam Speaker, having presided as a substitute sit-in member on the Foreign Affairs, Defence, Trade and Select Committee, I've been privy only to part of these discussions. But in saying so, I will continue the pace of the debate this evening as we speak about the PACER Plus Amendment Bill. So for those who are listening out there in the public, the PACER Plus, as previous speakers this evening have addressed the House upon, is a landmark trade and development agreement. It will lower barriers and provide greater opportunity for New Zealand businesses, whilst raising living standards, creating jobs, opportunities and increasing exports in Pacific Island countries. I just hearken to some kōrero that was shared by the co-leader of the Green Party this evening. And with the Greens taking a minority view on this, it's somewhat not unsurprising that, again, they're jumping the waka when it comes to trade. And it's not surprising that, again, it's calling into question a level of integrity around this coalition government, where one of the parties to that is challenging what the views are of its other party participants. However, I will come back to the bill, Madam Speaker. We know that it's known that this Pacific Agreement on Closer Economic Relations Plus, the PACER Plus, is a free trade agreement, and coincidentally, it was signed in June 2017 in Tonga. It is under the national interest analysis that has been provided around this agreement. PACER Plus is a plurilateral treaty-level agreement that had been negotiated between 14 countries. 11 of those have signed to this. Those 11 countries being Australia, Cook Islands, Kiribati, Nauru, which is very topical in our news at the moment, New Zealand, Niue, Samoa, Solomon Islands, Tuvalu, Vanuatu, and nonetheless Tonga. So just in summation, Madam Speaker, the background has been canvassed. Statistics: New Zealand is home to almost 296,000 Pacific peoples. It is a growing youth population of our Pacifica peoples here in Aotearoa. New Zealand exports around 1 billion of goods to the Pacific regions a year. Around 30% of Pacific nations' exports go to Australia and New Zealand. And New Zealand and Australia notably are the largest source of tourists for the Pacific. New Zealand has also committed to invest at least 20% of its total official development assistance in aid for trade in the Pacific region. It's important, Madam Speaker, that in relation to that is about providing the, well, in relation to that, it is about, for the first 5 years after PACER Plus has been entered into, that there's an estimated $340 million invested into the economic infrastructure and capacity building within those Pacific nations. So the intended benefits of PACER Plus are, in summary, a more predictable trading environment, more consistent and transparent rules throughout the region on sanitary and phytosanitary measures, that's around animal and human imports and exports, technical barriers to trade and customs procedures. It also, well, that bit, if you're interested, it's at page 58. I refer to the member across the House there. It's at page 58 of the agreement, so you may be enlightened by learning something this evening as well. And also, just by way of summary, Madam Speaker, in concluding around that, the benefits that PACER Plus will enter into force 60 days after 8 of those negotiating parties that I'd outlined of the 11 have notified Tonga that they've completed their domestic requirements. So In due course, this will come into implementation. To our trading partners in the Pacific Rim, this is something to be celebrated for all. Kia ora.
Thank you.
Whakawhawhanga Fletcher Tabato.
Aloha lalei, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much for the opportunity to